Hello everyone, today I'm going to talk about my VBC Lightning 12M. I'm going to talk about the modifications I've done and the parts I've been using so far. Now, first you can see that there's a two-tone coloring going on here with the aluminum parts. That is just simply a red magic marker, alright? You can add a nice little custom look to your VBC Lightning or any other 1/12 scale that has any exposed aluminum machine surfaces, okay? If you don't like it, just clean it off with some motor spray and you're good to go. Now, the lower suspension arm, well, the suspension setup here is completely different to the VBC kit parts. Well, the kit parts, the plastics are too soft, and I found that the pivot balls were binding way too much. And regardless of how much reaming I did with the plastics, so I just did away with that. And most importantly, I had unusual coning going on with the front tire. It was actually coning like this. Generally, it cones like this, but it was coning like that, and I found out that it was the plastics that were too flexible, and under load, it was just flexing so much, and regardless of how much camber or camber gain I was using, it was still doing the exact same thing. So I had to switch that all out. Um, like I said, you could probably use the composite VBC plastics and you should be okay. You can, if you do decide to go with the Xeon lower suspension arm and steering block, you can use the VBC Kingpin and the pivot balls as well. All right, I've also gone ahead and I used the associated upper arm and Yokomo outer ball link setup. Okay. Now, behind here, where the steering link is connected, I'm using 3.5 millimeter shims in order to reduce the amount of bump steer when the suspension is being compressed. Okay. I'm using a 0.5 millimeter shim to space out the track to about 168 millimeters wider, the more stability. All right. I'm running the caster shims all the way at the back to give me quite a bit of caster. Front spring, I'm using associated, what is that? Associated 0.45 spring. I'm not too sure what that converts over to imperial measurements, but I think that might be 0.018. Correct me if I'm wrong. You'll also notice that I'm running the front brace. This is ideal for running on carpet surfaces. I've tried running without it, and the car just felt broken because the flexing was too much under compression. You'll also notice that this is the left-hand side of the suspension, and I'm running the right bulkhead on this side. Well, the VBC design has these little cutouts on the bulkheads, machine cutouts, which allows like a FRP shim to be placed in there so you can adjust the actual upper length of the arm. Well, I wasn't really too fond of that because I found that maybe that's a point where flexing can occur. And so what I did is I swapped the bulkheads around, so I have the upper caster block flush, or contacting the actual lower bulkhead. So there's no flexing whatsoever. There's no material in between. All right. Easy to do. Just switch it left and right. All right. Now let's take a look at the servo. This is the floating servo mount. Now I'm running the Sanwa SRGHR, the mini high-speed servo. This is kind of like the go-to servo to have for 1/12 scale, especially if you're trying to reduce weight. It's very fast and lightweight servo. Now, you have two options of mounting this servo on the chassis. You can either mount it using servo mounts, or you can use the servo tabs that are built into the servo case. I prefer using the servo tabs that are built into the servo case because it allows for direct mounting of the servo to the chassis, or for this situation, the upper floating mount. Okay. Now, there's a bit of an issue with this setup here. Now, when I originally mounted the actual servo to the floating servo mount, the steering links were pointing like this, which is not good. Ideally, you want to have them straight or a little bit forward like so. All right. Now, in order to solve this issue, I am using a Servo Saver. I think it's a Kimbrough Servo Saver. And with a Kimbrough Servo Saver, you're given multiple inserts depending on the actual servo you're running. Now, I have the insert right here, which is, as you can see, pushed out slightly. What I've done is I placed a shim in between the Servo Saver itself and the adapter, which allows for the actual links to be moved forward slightly. This is the only way you can do it, unless there is a manufacturer that offers ball ends that have a really short neck. That will bring the servo links a little bit farther forward. Then that would be great. However, I think I have probably the shortest ball necks that are available on the market. So, like I said, I placed a shim in between the Servo Saver itself and the actual adapter, and that's shifted the links, shifted everything forward just slightly, and has allowed for the links to be straight and dead on. All right. Now, one thing you have to keep in mind is you want to make sure that that Servo Saver, the servo spline is directly in line with the center of the chassis. You don't want the servo spline to be over here or over here. You want that to be directly in line. Because when you're driving your car, you want to make sure that you have the right steering geometry for the left and right hand side. All right. Now this is from what I understand, this is only an issue with the Sanwa servo, with the servo links being pointed back. Very well, the Futaba could be in a similar situation. Futaba servos could be in a similar situation. I'm not too sure. But definitely, if you're in a situation where the links are not pointed straight, like so, or forward slightly, then this little trick should help out. But I haven't tried it yet on the track. You just have to be cautious about hitting things. But there's enough material in the servo spline to really hold everything together. All right. Now let's shift over to the actual central portion of the car. Now you'll notice here the car has the stock hold positions, which I never use. I prefer using a longer shock. So I've used the hold position that's just one ahead of these hold positions here. Okay. And I've taken the mount out of there and I've moved it up to the front because there's really no need, and it allows you to really kind of place your wiring in a cleaner, more manageable fashion. Now with this position, it's made the shock a little bit longer, which has also reduced the amount of up travel. I found with the shock hold position here, I had ridiculous amounts of up travel, which wasn't necessary. And just by moving the whole position forward, it's brought the up travel to a manageable and more easier to work with, I guess you could say. All right. Now let's move towards here. I've used rubber O-rings on both ends here to really help locate the battery, so it's in a more central position. It stops the battery from shifting side to side, and I've also added these little locator tabs here, which prevents the battery from shifting forward under hard impacts. All right, and that's pretty much it for how things are going. The rear suspension, nothing really to speak of. I'm actually going to be running 220 CST in this shock, very lightweight oil. I'm trying something different here. After speaking with the Yokomo mechanic, he found that running 150 CST to about 200 CST is ideal for 1/12 scale under high traction conditions. Low traction, thicker weight, stiffer springs. I'm running softer springs and softer oils for high traction. So I'm running 220 CST. The reason why it's like 220 is because it's like an associated shock oil weight. And also the damper tubes will be set at 10,000 CST Side spring 0.45, and same as the front, as I mentioned before. The spring, this is the softest spring offered by VBC, and I'll have to test this out, see how it works. For the rear setup, nothing really to talk about. Just when you're tweaking the pod, just make sure that you keep the axle in the pod so everything stays in alignment. If you take the axle out and you adjust the pod, tweaking it, it might be difficult to get the axle back in because there might be some form of misalignment. Okay. Underneath the chassis, you can see here, I've done a little bit of coloring. I've gone ahead with aluminum chassis and aluminum pod. I found that the results have been very promising with the aluminum chassis. Makes the car a lot more flatter in the corners, and I particularly like the aluminum rear pod because it really stiffens up the rear pod assembly and it makes it a lot more durable for any hard impacts. I found with a carbon rear pod plate, any taps on the wall, and I found that the motor bulkheads twisted. That's right, twisted. So you want to probably look at picking up one of these bad boys here, and if anything else, I would pick up this and maybe just try running the carbon fiber chassis. But other than that, the car is working out really well. Can't complain, and hopefully those little tips and modifications will help you out, and have fun and enjoy your Lightning 12M. Okay, bye-bye.